Hello everyone, it's Laffy Traffy. We are here today to talk about One Piece chapter 1023, Two Peas in a Pod. And I thought that this chapter was originally talking about Zoro and Sanji, but it turns out there's a lot more to it. If this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe. If you've seen my reaction, go check that out because this was a great chapter. I do live reactions on Twitch, so go follow me over there if you want to catch my live reaction. Next Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do them every time a chapter is coming out, and there's no break next week, so that's exciting. Also check me out on Twitter for more One Piece gaming and anime content. But talking about this chapter, I didn't know that the expectations left from last chapter, 11 out of 10 best chapter ever, could be met. But it was with this chapter because once again we go around to many different places, many different fights, and we get tons of lore drop and a huge reveal at the end of the chapter, which stick around to the end of the video so we can talk about that. But starting off the beginning of the chapter, we pick up exactly where last chapter left off, where Zoro and Sanji are standing there over King and Queen after their super combo attack knocked them down. They're not super injured though, because they're just laying there, and I thought it was a really funny panel that they're both just staring up to the sky, wondering, oh great, this is what our life has come to now. We have to deal with these brats. But they're just standing there and they get right back up, mocking them about how they're not as powerful and that they're king and queen and Jack, the calamities of Kaido, and that they're gonna have to try better than that. And we get Jack later in the chapter as well, so this is a very calamity-centric video. I'm really enjoying how this fight is ending up to be more of a group battle, a 2v2, instead of them pairing off separately and Zoro versing King and then Sanji versing Queen. So with this whole group dynamic, they exchange blows back and forth, they got each other's backs too, and something interesting that was pointed out to me is that King went after Sanji and Queen went after Zoro, and maybe it's just a coincidence, but their bounties, Sanji is higher, so maybe King and Queen kind of paired up on that level. I don't know if Queen would admit to being weaker than King in any way, but just a fun observation that I saw, and I thought that it was worth mentioning because, you know, they don't know any better. But towards the end of these battles we're getting, we do see that Zoro is paired up more with King and Sanji is more with Queen. And starting with Sanji here, there is a lot to discuss because we get the drop, which is 100% foreshadowing to something, that Sanji's body, after using the raid suit, is feeling odd, feeling a little different, and at first maybe I was thinking that that is just the fatigue that he's feeling from using the raid suit, you know, since he doesn't have an augmented body. Another wacky idea that came to my head that I don't know if I put too much stock in it, but it's worth mentioning that maybe the raid suit will somehow enhance Sanji's hockey ability. Maybe he'll have some sort of awakening similar to how Usopp had his, Zoro had his. Maybe somehow the raid suit will be able to let Sanji unlock advanced armament techniques where you can damage the inside of your opponent. That was just something that I thought of that would be really interesting, and don't hate me, but I also was thinking that maybe it could be something like Conqueror's Hockey because he was saying he was feeling a little weird and I don't know how the raid suit would really affect that, so I'm not gonna really put too much stock on the whole Conqueror's Hockey for Sanji thing because I'm okay if Sanji doesn't get Conqueror's Hockey. Zoro has it, he's the first mate, that's perfectly fine, but I wanted to throw it out there. Don't hate me. But with those two options out of the way, I think more than likely Sanji might be unlocking his dormant enhanced Germa genetics that his brothers have. Queen is quick to point out that Sanji's fire cannot be normal, no human conjures fire except for a certain race, and that it must be augmentation, but Sanji says, no, it's just my passion burns brighter than any flame can. And he refuses to accept that Judge has anything to do with it, which is fair, and I would be okay if that was true, but we have some sides to look at, because on one end, some think that Sanji's Diable Jamba in general is a hint towards Germa's genetic enhancements, but he used that technique on Judge when they fought against each other in Whole Cake Island, and unless Judge was being super oblivious or just chose not to mention it, which I don't think is likely, Judge mentioned that still to this day, Sanji's a failure, he's a plain human, he didn't get anything that his brothers have. He's useless, a failure, everything. So that leads me to believe that Judge would know if Sanji's augmentation developed or anything in the time that they spent apart, but they didn't mention that, and in fact he goes out of his way to say that Sanji is still normal. So I don't think the Diable Jamba really has anything to do with the Germa enhancements, but that could just be Judge not really caring and just in his own mindset tunnel visioning the fact that Sanji's a failure, that he couldn't see the big picture that maybe Sanji is unlocking some of his augmentations. That is a possibility, because I always thought that it was odd that Sanji, out of all of them, didn't get a single bit of augmentation, whereas all of his other brothers had the full thing, no emotions, body augmentations, powers, everything. So in that perspective, it's about time. The other thing that's kind of pushing towards the idea that it's not the Diable Jamba that's Germa's augmentation is that it has to do with the raid suit specifically. It wasn't until using the raid suit twice now in difficult situations that Sanji is mentioning any weird feelings or his body feeling weird in any way. So it leads me to believe that it's 100% the raid suit's involvement in this that has Sanji feeling weird, which means that there's something in the raid suit, the lineage factor, the DNA, I mean, the chemistry of the suit, whatever you'd like to call it, is modified so that it only works with Sanji, because we saw that neither Chopper nor Luffy were able to use the raid suit. It was only dedicated to Sanji, so that implies that there's some Sanji DNA in that. So maybe there's some, like, combining of modifications to Sanji's skin, or some type of reaction that the raid suit is causing in Sanji's lineage factor. I'm no chemist, if you couldn't tell, nor am I any type of researcher of DNA or genetics, anything like that, but you get the point, and it's One Piece, so it doesn't have to go that deep. And it's just One Piece enough where I would be able to see that the raid suit affecting Sanji's genes is what's making his body possibly awaken dormant enhancements. So stay tuned to see that Sanji might have some new powers, or at least hardened skin, durability, something like that in the near future without the raid suit. So that'll be super interesting. And I started with Sanji because honestly, throughout everything, the Sanji reveal was what really piqued my curiosity, because we didn't get into it. It was like just a little speck, little sprinkle of something there. Like, we dive into Zoro, King, Momo later, but Sanji's, it was just so offhanded that it can't be nothing, and that drew my attention towards it even more. Moving on to Zoro, however, Zoro had some amazing scenes and panels here fighting against King, where he sees that King does not have the honorary swordsman techniques, and Zoro kind of waves that away, like, well, you never really claimed to be a swordsman, so I don't blame you for using underhanded techniques. However, be prepared, I'm going to win this battle, and if I have to do the same to you, I'm going to. So that was really cool to see Zoro very passionate and very determined to win this fight, because as they mentioned last chapter, if they win these fights, the prospect of Luffy becoming the king of the pirates becomes real and becomes ever so close to becoming fulfilled. So they are holding these fights to high importance, rightfully so. Now we get a little bit of dialogue from Kawamatsu, who's joining the fray, at least the observers, along with Old Man Hyo, and Chopper's there, and Izo shows up later, but Kawamatsu specifically mentions that when Zoro was handed Enma, he didn't protest that much because he saw a lot of similarities between Zoro and Ushimaru. Shimosuke Ushimaru is the descendant of Ryuma, and we get even more development there, because if you're not already on the bandwagon that Zoro is a descendant of Ryuma, this was your chapter. It's still not confirmed, it's still plausible deniability, but the fact that they look similar, Kawamatsu is even noticing that they fight similarly, and there was a drop here that Ryuma was also a one-eyed samurai. The whole Zoro scar thing is becoming very relevant. Maybe we'll get some information on if that was a purposeful technique that Zoro did to enhance his swordsmanship in some way, or is it just aesthetic, or if it's hiding superpowers. I don't know. But the title of this chapter is dedicated to Zoro and Ushimaru and Ryuma of being very similar samurai, descendant throughout the years. And it was in an SBS, by the way, that a Shimosuki came from Wano, forged the swords, went to the East Blue, and set up that dojo there that now Zoro trained at. So Kuina is a descendant of the Shimosukis, and that kind of ties all of Zoro's similarities with that even more, and now he's fighting with the same swords. It's great, it's great. We get a lot of Zoro stuff here, and if you're asking me, I'm gonna say that he's probably 85% a descendant. He doesn't necessarily have to be a direct descendant, because he could just be carrying on a will from Kuina, who is a Shimosuki, and Ryuma, because he took Shisui from Ryuma as a corpse, but it was still him. Close enough, at least. And now he's fighting with that. So that's what I was hoping. I was talking about this a little bit in my reaction, that I hope Zoro, after this, he's seen as a renowned samurai saving Wano, and maybe he'll be gifted Shisui back? I don't know, that'll make 4 swords, so we'll talk about it later, but just throwing it out there. I also wanted to point out something very interesting that I happened upon while rewatching Zoro and Gyukimaru's fight on the bridge. Gyukimaru talks about Ryuma. And there's a little scene, it's only in the anime, I checked, it's not in the chapters or anything, but as he's being talked about as a great samurai, there's a moment where his left eye flashes. It flashes red, and it's the eye that is closed, that is scarred over in our current rendition of him. And I don't know if everyone has noticed this, but the anime often knows things that we don't, because, you know, notes from Oda, spoilers, things like that. But I just wanted to put it out there. It is episode 933. Ryuma is shown with a flashing left eye, which is his scarred over eye. So if there weren't enough theorists that think that Zoro has a super powered eye and it's gonna open with some advanced hockey or something, this will only increase. This blew my mind when I caught a glimpse of this, so I just had to share that. However, upon further investigation, the scene shown in the anime is a reenactment of the Monsters chapter, which is canon, featuring Ryuma cutting off a dragon's head. Ryuma at that time does have both of his eyes. His left eye is not scarred over, however, it is still pointing to significance of his left eye, and I will not concede. The end. Now, moving on from Zoro and Sanji, who were a main focus of this chapter, I want to talk about King for a little bit, and there's still not a lot that we know, but we do know in this chapter that his race was name-dropped to be a Lunarian. His race was an ancient race on top of the Red Line, which we do not know much about the Red Line, which piqued my curiosity in the first place when we knew that he was some sort of race on the Red Line. But now we know that he's called a Lunarian. And my main question here is, what is a moon-based race doing on the Red Line? And what connection does that have to the moon? What does that have connection to with Eneru and the automaton and the civilization, the Shandorians, the other wing people, all of them? There is something going on here. And also, on top of all that, why is King still alive? Is he just a long-lived race, and that why he's still alive, even though this race was present years and years and decades and ages ago? Or is there somewhere else that this race has taken refuge, like the moon? I don't know. But just the fact that King's race is now connected as well to the moon. The moon's important, guys. If you don't know up to this point, the moon is important, and I am very here for finding out all of its uses. Is it an ancient weapon? Is it where Laugh Tale is? Is it the future of the One Piece manga in its entirety. What could it be? I don't know, but it is important, and Eneru is going to be back. Trust me. We get some glimpses of Inuarashi and Jack fighting back and forth, just solidifying why they're fighting, and Inuarashi states that he's fighting for the whole of Zou. For everything that Zou suffered, for everything that Jack did to Zou, everything. So we really feel for Inuarashi here, and simultaneously we see Nekomamushi is also fighting against Perospero, specifically for Pedro. So they're both fighting for a good cause there against two big villains in their personal lives. So I really like how their opponents are important to each of them, and I am definitely ready for Jack and Perospero to be put to the dirt, because not a fan of either one of them. Jack's alright, but Perospero, you know, if you've watched any of my reviews with Perospero in it, you know my feelings about Perospero. I can't explain it, I just hate him. Perorin. Also, great detail here that Inuarashi takes Jack's trunk and shoulder throws it just like Nekomamushi did when his entrance on Zou happened, and that was what solidified Nekomamushi as my favorite scabbard, probably still to this day. But it was great to see Jack experience that once more by another mink who is protecting their homeland and defending it. It was also very heartbreaking to see that Ashura lying on the floor here, although it was really good that he's the reason that Inuarashi can transform into Sulong, that he is still there, and it was just sad to see his body there, because that was rough. But both of these fights conclude, at least for this chapter, in both of them turning into their Sulong form again, which I am very excited for. They're getting a second chance. They're gonna be worn out after this for sure. I'm kind of worried about their health. I'm just overall excited to see more in-depth look into both of their Sulong forms, since we didn't get a lot of it in the first reveal of it against Jack, so I am ready for these one-on-one fights to feature their Sulong forms. We get a quick snippet of Raizo here as well, and I did not see this in my reaction the first time, but Fukurokuju is using his earlobes to fly, and if that's not One Piece, I don't know what is. So he's a man of many talents with his earlobes, and once again I'm asking, you know, maybe that's how his earlobes became so long, is when they were just, you know, kind of dangly. He tried to fly with them, but it wasn't working, so he practiced every day, and eventually he managed to stretch out his earlobes long enough so that they could be propellers, so that he could fight like a true ninja. And now they're really stretched out and long. But effective. But Raizo's part here is not really to show their fight, it's more about what's going to be coming later in the chapter, and once again, Raizo's passionate speeches about what they're fighting for and the reason they're here really hit home, because he talks about Momo here specifically, and Fukurokuju is trying to, you know, shit on Momo. He's just a kid. Why are you following him? Like, there's no reason. Your lord's dead. Move on. Get a life, basically, is what he's saying. But Raizo stands up for Momo and says that Wano's history and Wano's everything, its people, everything that's happening will shape Momo into a mature person. Lord. Shogun. And Raizo, along with all of the other scabbards, are making sure that no one comes to interfere into Momo's coming-of-age story, which we see how that's going later on, but yeah. And by later on, I mean on the next page, because the end of that page is the Heart Pirates talking about Kaido is here. And you had me in the first half, not gonna lie, because I was like, oh my god, Kaido's here? What's gonna happen? Why is he here? What happened to Yamato? Why are they fighting on the ground? What happened to Onigashima? Is Onigashima falling? All of these things were going through my head. But, scrolling down, we see that that is not Kaido. That's not Kaido! And Luffy is standing proudly and assertively against a giant dragon. And at closer look, although it looks almost identical to Kaido, this is indeed Momonosuke, aged up by Shinobu's abilities. Even though I'm not completely on board with this idea, you cannot help but be completely hyped with this, because holy crap, did you see the panel? And then they flash back to where they first met in Punk Hazard. Man, that was years ago. Weeks ago for them, months ago. Maybe a month or so ago. God, time is really weird. But they think back to when Momo, you know, his little dragon form, but that is no more. We see here that Momo has been transformed into a giant dragon, ready to face off against Kaido, I guess? Maybe. Or, more than likely, he might be having a very similar Hour of Legends moment that his father did. Speaking of Odin, Momo, by the look on Shinobu's face, which was heartbreaking and so cute, I think Momo is looking a lot like Toki. Or Odin, depending on, you know, how you want to interpret it. No, Momo is probably almost, you know, identical to Odin, and it's going to be really interesting to see Kaido's reaction if we, of course, we're going to get Kaido reaction to when Momo transforms from this dragon into his human form. What is Kaido's reaction going to be? But most importantly, what are the other Scabbards' reaction going to be? Because we have seen now, time and time again, that they have been faked out with fake drawings of Odin. So I'm curious if there's going to be a moment where Momo shows up, dressed and looking very similar to Odin, that some of the Scabbards might think that he's a fraud and go to attack him or something, and then Momo has to convince them, hopefully Shinobu will be around, that it's actually Momo. And this is their new shogun of Wano, because that moment is going to be so beautiful and so emotional when the Scabbards see Momo like he is, like similar to Shinobu right here. I mean, to see this, to see the hope literally grow in front of your eyes, standing up for Wano and the country as a whole, man. And back to what I was saying, the Hour of Legends, there's a theory going around, and I am really here for it, that if Onigashima falls, Momo will be there to physically hold up Onigashima so that it does not fall on the flower capital. And if Momo's pure purpose here is to hold up Onigashima, man, that is going to be worth it, honestly. That would turn me over to the side of supporting Momo aging up. And by the way, he aged up all the way to 28. They could have made him just like 20, like Luffy. Luffy's 19, but you get it. They didn't have to get that extra 8 years. Poor Momo. Maybe it'll be stacked later on in his lifetime and he won't lose 20 years of his life. But it is his country, he is the shogun, and sacrifices are needed to be made when you face someone like Kaido. So I'm just hoping that Momo's sacrifice will not be in vain, which of course it won't be, because if nothing else, we're gonna get a shot of Luffy riding a freaking dragon up to Onigashima and facing another dragon, and that is a panel that I need right now. But we're probably not gonna get that for a while because, well, I think there's a lot of fights that need to be wrapped up before Luffy gets to Kaido, or maybe he gets to Kaido and maybe they fight side by side with all the other fights. I'm not sure how it's gonna go. This is my first full arc reading the manga, so, and that's assuming that this arc is gonna be like previous arcs. I'm not sure, but point is, I feel like the other fights are going to be wrapped up, and then we're going to conclude with Luffy versus Kaido. Whether Momo will be holding up Onigashima by that point, probably, because it's going to be in less than 15 minutes, and that's not a long time. So, yeah, this end panel was great, and I loved reading it. I loved, like, the hype up that it was Kaido, because, yeah, if you see a giant dragon, what are the odds that it's not Kaido? But I am really interested in his color scheme for Momo's dragon, because even the coloring here is much lighter, and considering Momo is more of a pink and peach colored, I think that the color schemes will be really interesting here in the anime, and we get a color spread by Grish too, which showcases his color scheme as the giant dragon, which is really beautiful as well. I'm just excited to see this in the anime. We haven't even started yet, but the dragon versus dragon thing that we're 100% gonna get, oh man. But hopefully we won't have to wait long. I don't know if we're going to get it in the next chapter, but the next chapter does not have a break, so stay tuned for next chapter. Once again, this chapter was amazing and just as great as last chapter, which is crazy because last chapter was amazing, but this had Momo and so much lore, so much world building expanded upon in this chapter with the Lunarians, Vegapunk and Queen, Zoro and Ushimaru and Ryuma and the swords and King and Queen and everything. And then it all comes down to Momo turning into a giant dragon. Oh man. Let me know down below just how hype you think that this chapter is, because holy crap, it's great and I loved reading it. I've read it so many times at this point. But that'll conclude my review right there. So again, let me know down below what your thoughts on it and we can continue the conversation. Also check me out on Twitch and Twitter so we can talk over there. I do live reactions on Twitch like I mentioned earlier, so go follow me over there. I'm officially a Twitch affiliate too, yay! But I do live reactions to the One Piece chapter every Friday at 12 EST, every week that there's a chapter at least. So go follow me over there if you want to come hang out and talk about the chapter live with me. Otherwise, I play some games too, so that's fun. Excited to see you guys over there. Make sure you subscribe as well and like the video if you enjoyed this chapter and you liked anything that I had to say, and leave your comments below. Super excited for the color spread as well once we get that big panel of all the top characters. That's something to look forward to as well, and we'll see the next one in the next chapter. But until then, have a great day, follow your dreams, and check me next time. Bye!